Welcome everyone to another After Effects tutorial. I am your host, Elias Sarantopoulos. This time around, you will learn how to create your first Lottie animation in After Effects, install the LottieFiles plugin, and export your work to both desktop and mobile device. Up next. So inside After Effects with a new document open, I only have just a couple of text layers in the timeline here, and looking inside the composition settings, I have set this composition to be a square composition, which means I've set the width and the height to 1000 pixels. The background is set to white and the duration for now is set to 30 seconds, but that will decrease considerably by the time we finish this Lottie animation. All right, so now the Lottie files are based on a vector, which means these two text layers need to be converted into vector shapes. So I would select this layer here, right click, create, and then use the create shapes from text. And I will do the same here for the exclamation mark. Right click, create, and choose create shapes from text, which means I don't need the original. Just going to remove that. And remove that, and then I'm going to rename this because personally I would like to see outlines. So I will press enter return and then just remove that and just have great. I will do the same one here, enter return on the keyboard and just leave the exclamation mark by itself. All right, great. So let's go ahead and animate the great. So first, inside the fill options, I will remove the fill, and then inside the layer itself, I will go ahead and click on the Add Flat menu to bring up a stroke function. Now, this stroke here will actually influence all these shape layers here. Now, we don't see this stroke because the color is set to white. In this case, I'm just going to use the eyedropper to use a color of my choice that I've set inside the libraries. That's one thing. Another thing is I'm going to bring the stroke size, the stroke width to 1. And one more thing I would like to do is to round up the lines here. So I'm going to do this by changing the line join. Instead of a miter join, I'm going to set this to round join. All right, great. So this is fine. Now it's time for us to animate this. And we're going to do this by bringing up the trim paths operator. Again, we're going to do this inside this Add Flat menu. We're going to go ahead and choose the trim paths operator. Now, this operator here is a great feature because it allows us to animate the start, the end, and the offset of a path with precise adjustments. So with this one here, I'm going to actually scrub the current time indicator to the very beginning. I will set the first keyframe to be 0%. I will zero this out. Click on the stopwatch to create the first keyframe. I will scrub the current time indicator a bit and then set this keyframe to be 100%. Let's go ahead and bring this back to the very beginning and press the space bar on the keyboard for the quick run preview. There we go. Okay, this looks okay for now. Now, one thing I would like to bring to your attention is the trim multiple shapes is set to simultaneously. Now, this is actually quite important because if you set this to individually, that might not work actually with the Lottie files. So what you need to do is you need to hop into the web here and go to this address here, the supported features. Here you get all your answers. What is supported and what is not supported. As you can see here, the trim paths operated individually is not supported on the Windows platform. And that's why I'm going to keep this on simultaneously. All right. And that's the only reason that I kept that. All right, great. So another thing I would like to change is I would like to change those two keyframes. Right now, these two keyframes are set to be linear keyframes, which means they have constant speed and velocity. So we can see this inside the graph editor that is represented by this straight segment here, this straight line, which means this is a linear interpolation. All right, now I'm going to change this keyframe type from linear interpolation to easy is. And I'm going to do this right here. Just click on that. And easy is basically is a combination of ease in and ease out. And that is used when elements need to be accelerated and decelerated. And that's what we want to do here. And by the way, for the speed type here, I'm using the speed graph. All right. So let me go ahead and zoom in a bit here and look at this graph here. Now, as you can see, those two keyframes, here's the first keyframe, this is the second one. I can actually use and change the influence handle here and change the influence percentage. Okay, and I can do this actually do it manually, or I can just double click on this keyframe and bring up the keyframe velocity. So I will change the incoming velocity. This is the incoming velocity. I'm going to set this to 70%. Click OK. And then I will double click on this keyframe and set the outgoing velocity also to 70%. This is the way I like to do it sometimes. So as you can see here, the animation accelerates here, peaks up, and then decelerates. See, it starts slow, it peaks, and then it dies down. And that's why we use the easy is. All right, so let's go ahead and play this animation. Press the space bar on the keyboard to do that for the quick run preview. And this is what we have. Maybe I can just make this just a tad a bit slower, like so. All right. So I like what I see. This is the first animation on the grid. Next, we're going to continue for the exclamation mark. So next up, let's go ahead and animate the exclamation mark. So for that, I will go ahead and change its fill color to a color of my choice here. Click OK. Here it is. And let me go ahead and zoom in a bit. So I just want to show you something. And that is that the pivot point, the anchor point, is set right in the center. In this case, we want to reposition the anchor point to be right here at the very bottom. So for that, I will go ahead and use the pan behind anchor point tool. Click and drag this at the very bottom of the exclamation mark, which means all animation will take place from this anchor point. I will switch to the selection tool and just zoom out. All right, now I will go ahead and select this layer and then press the letter U on the keyboard to be able to see all the keyframes at the same time. And I'm doing this because I want to be able to see where this one ends, because wherever this one ends, the other animation begins. So we're going to do this, actually animate the position property. But I want to animate only the Y position, which is this way. So what we're going to do is just click on the position, select that, and then right click, and then separate the dimensions. Now, just click away, you have the X position and the Y position separately. So I will just select the Y position, click on the stopwatch to create the first keyframe, scrub this a bit, and then create another keyframe. Scrub this again, the current time indicator, create another keyframe, and do exactly the same and create another keyframe. Now I need to go back to the very first keyframe, which is this one right here. So for that, I'm going to use the letter J on the keyboard to make sure that I'm right here on the very top. With this layer here, with this keyframe selected, I'm going to move this, actually reposition this to outside the artboard here, outside the composition window. So for that, I'm going to use Shift and up arrow key on the keyboard to do that. There we go. And let's go ahead and animate this. This is probably going to be a little slow, but let's go ahead and do a run preview. Yes, it's a little slow, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and zoom in a bit here and just bring those closer to each other. I have something like that. All right. So this is one thing. Another thing is, I'm just going to select this keyframe here. And what I want is, let me press the letter J again twice to go right on top of this keyframe. I want this one to be nudged a little bit, like just a bit up. So again, I'm going to use the Shift key and the up arrow key twice. Once, twice. And then let's go ahead and do a run preview. Press the space bar. Let's see the animation. Bam. Not bad. But what I can do is select this keyframe and change this from linear interpolation and change keyframe type to easy is. And then inside the graph editor, we can see this right here. Let me go ahead and zoom in a bit and change the influence to perhaps around 70 or so. All right. So let's see how this works. Let's press the space bar. Bam. Like what I see it. I'm just going to keep that. But of course, you can change the timing. Let's do just an overall RAM preview here. Press the space bar. There we go. I like what I see. So I'm going to keep it and then move on to the next step. All right. So next animation will be us creating some straight segments and animate those straight segments around these two shape layers. And we're going to create something as we call accent motion graphics. First of all, let me go ahead and bring up inside the guides and grids here options. I will bring up the title accent save. I'm doing this because I want to be able to see this very center point, which is this one here, this hairline. This is the very center point. Then just make sure that nothing is selected. Go ahead and grab the pen tool and just click once to create the first anchor point. And immediately we get this new layer into our timeline, which is named Shape Layer 1. Let me go ahead and zoom out a bit. And then I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'll create the second anchor point, perhaps around here. So here's one thing. Let me go ahead and switch to the selection tool and zoom in for a couple of things I want to show you. And that is, first of all, the anchor point is right here at the very bottom, which is correct because we want to animate this from the very bottom. Plus, as you can see here, we have the beginning and end is actually straight, is flat. So I want to have actually round corners, which means, let me go ahead and rename this to line 1, and then twirl this down to open the contents, and inside this stroke here, and inside the line cap, inside of a butt cap, I will go ahead and use a round cap. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and animate this. Okay, so we're going to do this using, again, the trim paths operator, which means we'll go ahead and click on this add a flat menu and bring up the trim paths operator. Now I'm going to animate this actually on both the start and the end. But first, let me go ahead and click on this exclamation mark layer and press the letter U on the keyboard to be able to see all the visible keyframes. I will scrap the current time indicator right here. So whatever that ends, the lines start animate. Great. So I will set the first keyframe on the start and the end. I will zero out the start, the end as well. So we have both start and end to 0%. I will scrap the current time indicator perhaps around here and set both of these to 100% by 100%. Now we won't be able to see anything because this is exactly the same animation. What we want to do is we want to have the line to start animating, and at some point the line will start to end. So we create a small gap between those two. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to zoom in a bit here, and I will offset this keyframe here. Let me bring this a little closer and bring this, separate those two. And when I do that, basically what I'm doing is I'm changing the lifespan of the line segment, and which means how quickly the line will appear or disappear. So let's say it starts like this, and then of course we need to change that as well. So if you like that, keep it. Let's see. All right, great, but it's too slow. Let's bring this a little closer. Maybe still a little slow, something along those lines. But we're going to do is we're going to again go back to the graph editor here. Let's focus on these two. Let's go inside the graph editor, marquee select those. Again, we're going to, from linear interpolation, we're going to change this to easy is. There we go. And I'm just going to do this by grabbing those influence handles and this one as well. Just make sure that you hold down the Shift key as you do. It's more or less the same. Let's do a quick run preview. Perfect. Now we need to do the same here. Select those two. And let's change this again to perhaps 70%. It's not accurate, but that's okay. It's very small difference between. And let's do a run preview again here. All right. So this is the very first part. I might just adjust a little bit here on my own, but this is the first part of this because we need to actually have more of these straight segments. Now, continuing building on this straight segment animation, the only thing I did is just spend a little time and offset those keyframes and change the lifespan of the straight segment. So the next step is basically to actually repeat this a bunch of times from the center point clockwise. So probably the first logical step is to click on this Add Flatten menu and use the repeater operator. Now, before I do that, let's head back to the LottieFiles, the supported features, and see if that gets supported in every device. And I'm referring this to this right here. You see, the repeater is supported except inside the iOS devices, which means I'm going to do this another way. In this case, I will go ahead and create a bunch of duplicates. And I'm going to use the Control-D or Command-D as a shortcut to do so. And I think I will actually do this 7 more times. So altogether we have 8 lines. So I will target line 2, press the letter R on the keyboard for the rotation and set the rotation to 45 degrees. Click on line 3, press the letter R on the keyboard and set this to 90 and continue this incrementally by 45 degrees. That would be 135. I will set this to 180. Line 6, I will set the rotation to 225 degrees. The line 7 here, that will be minus 90 degrees. And the last one, I will set this to minus 45 degrees. So let's go ahead and do a run preview here. Exactly what I wanted. Next up, what we're going to do is duplicate those bunch of lines and actually add a different color and just spice things up. So continuing building on this accent motion graphic, all I'm going to do is create a bunch of duplicates, offset them in time so the lifespan changes as well, and then also change the stroke color. So I will target this line 1 layer, which I will duplicate it, and then click and drag, bringing this all the way up to the layer stack. I will hit enter return and rename this to line 1 and in parentheses the letter Y. And I'm doing this because that indicates for me that the stroke of this straight segment will have a yellow color. So I will select the eyedropper and just select this color of my choice. Great. Now I will press the letter U on the keyboard to see those animation keyframes here. Let me go ahead and just zoom in a bit here to see what we're doing. So this starts to animate. Here is the yellow line that sits right on top. So I'm going to offset this just a bit. And also I'm going to offset this too. So let me do this slowly, scrubbing this. And I believe this is what I'd like to see. So let's go ahead and do a run preview here and see how this looks. That looks great. One more time. There we go. So I will continue this on my own, creating some more duplicates and rotate them and complete this before we go to the last step. All right, so I continue this and I created a bunch of these extra straight segments. Let me go ahead and do a quick run preview. This is what I was going for, but looks great. Now, Couple of things to do before we actually export this as a Lottie file, which means I will first of all unlock those two layers, shift select those two, and then click and drag all the way up to the layer stack because I want this accent motion graphic to appear behind it. That's one thing. Another thing what we need to do is actually trim the work area because we need to change the duration of the whole movie. So let me go ahead and see when this thing ends. Around here, I should say, what I'm going to do is press the letter N on the keyboard, and that will set the end of the work area to the current time. And then I will just right click and trim comp to work area. And this is what I'm actually going to export as a Lottie file. So the animation we just created in After Effects is ready to be used as a Lottie animation. So the first thing to do is to download the Lottie plugin for After Effects that will convert your animation to lines of code, which can be embedded to your apps or website. So here is the direct link for that. Just scroll down a bit and here is the link to download the plugin. In addition, in order for this to work, we need to install an extension manager. Couple of choices here. You can either click on this link or you can jump to this website, the AE scripts. Personally, I'm using the ZXP installer. Again, both of these URLs are listed below the video description, and go ahead and download for the OS of your choice. So inside my own downloads folder, the first I'm going to do is install the ZXP installer. So I will double click on that. I will agree to the terms, click to install. Has been installed successfully. Here's a window that we're going to get a message here very soon that says drag the ZXP files here or open them from the file menu, and that's what I'm going to do. I will use the keyboard shortcut. Here is the plugin, the After Effects plugin for the Lottie files. So I will select that and I will click to open. I will install that. It would take just a few seconds. So the plugin has been successfully installed. We can find the extension under the window and extensions. So I'm just going to close that. And now we're ready to jump into After Effects and export our animation as a Lottie file animation. So now back in After Effects, let's go ahead inside the window menu, extensions, and bring up the LottieFiles extension. Now, when you first launch the extension, you might come across this message. All that means is that you need to give permission to After Effects to allow scripts to write files and access network. In this case, I will close that up, and inside the Preferences panel and under the Scripting and Expressions, all I'm going to do is just allow scripts to write files and access network. Click OK, then head back to the window menu, extensions, and bring back the LottieFiles extension. This time around, as you can see, it works just fine. Now, in order to use the plugin, the first thing you need to do is you need to sign in into your LottieFiles account. As you can see, I have already logged in, so I'm just going to close that up. And then the first thing I see is the composition name Great Lottie, because this is the composition. Now, in the event that you have other compositions here, they will be populated right here. So you can actually render them individually. In this case, I just have this one. I will go ahead and render this out. As you can see here, this is the animation. It looks fantastic. And all I'm going to do is just upload this to my personal space inside my LottieFiles account. All right, this got uploaded. So I'm just going to head back to my personal account here, refresh. And here is the animation that we exported from After Effects as a Lottie file inside the private animations space. One last thing worth mentioning is that you can preview your Lottie animation inside your mobile device. So go ahead and download the app and then just make sure that you log in into your LottieFiles account. Once you do that, head back to the LottieFiles private animation space and then click on that animation. Once the window is launched, go ahead and scan the QR code that is given to you with your mobile device, and then you will be able to preview your work and troubleshoot if necessary inside your mobile device. If you like what you see and everything just works fine, you can go ahead and publish your work. Thank you everyone for visiting my channel, listening to the inspired lectures. Do not forget to subscribe and most of all, share the knowledge.